Welcome to Career Bits, the weekly podcast of the University Career Center at UNC Charlotte. I'm Jay, and we are continuing our spotlight series on career communities. In this episode, we're talking about the healthcare, science, and research career community. So if you have an interest in the health and welfare of people, the use of scientific knowledge to make the world a better place, or managing systems that relate to healthcare, this community might be for you, as it targets organizations that promote and manage the health, wellness, and scientific research of life in all of its forms. Work environments include hospitals, laboratories, health education, and policy think tanks, or those continuing career pursuits into health professions programs. On this episode, we have interviews with campus representatives, employer partners, and of course our career coaches. So let's get things started. Very happy to welcome to Career Bits Deborah Beat, lecturer in the Department of Public Health Sciences here at UNC Charlotte. Deborah, thank you so much for being on Career Bits. Please introduce yourself.
Jay, thank you for inviting me. And hi, my name is Deborah Beat. I'm a lecturer, like you just said, in public health sciences. I teach in two different undergraduate programs, public health, as well as the health systems management program. So I teach in both of those both of those majors.
So obviously on Career Bits here, we're trying to spotlight the various careers of healthcare science and research career community. And that covers a good bit of, public health and health systems administration, a lot of what you teach. Yes. So just to step back for students that may be new to UNC Charlotte or beginning to really start that exploration process of choosing where they want to go, if they're considering a major or professional direction in the HSR career community, what are things that they should consider in terms of this is the kind of stuff I should be into and the kind of things I'm going to study, stuff like that? Okay,
so I think that we now sort of offer these two majors when I'm thinking about public health and HSMT, which give us sort of the whole spectrum of the health system. And so if you have interest in the health system, you can find your space here. Especially, right, so you could also be a nurse or be pre-med, and you can even do these majors with the thought of being clinical later on. But HSMT is going to give you a really nice overview of what it's like to manage and basically do all of the administrative work that is required to make the health system run. So, for example, we are in the middle of a pandemic, and all of the doctors and nurses and all of the supply, like everything that has had to come together that is beyond what we would normally do in order for us to basically manage this pandemic is the responsibility of administrators. And people don't think about that, but they are, I consider them the backbone of the health system. And the health system doesn't run, like we need the doctors and nurses and other types of clinical folks, but we don't do anything without administrators. And that's what HSMT sort of prepares you to do. And then on the public health side of things, here's where we're talking more about any of the activities that sort of help us towards making sure everyone in the public, doesn't matter who you are, is safe and healthy. And so again, we're in the middle of a pandemic, so it's kind of a nice sort of, it is the merging of both spaces. Because the health system in this space has to work together in order for us to fight this pandemic. But anyone who has any interest in anything concerning the health system can find a space in between those two majors.
I do think that's one of the positive benefits of the times that we are living in and going through now is that this is much more front of brain for people because they see it. They see it in action.
People actually know what public health is.
Right.
Because they keep hearing the word. Even things like supply chain, which is something that you learn a little bit about in HSMT, which is basically like there are lots of jobs in that space and you can still work in the health system, but so many people don't even realize it exists. And all of a sudden there's been this attention drawn to, well, there are people who are sourcing, all kinds of materials. When you walk into a doctor's office, everything in there, someone has had to go out and get. And again, and it's someone's job to make sure all of those things are available. And then forget just in your doctor's office, then into the wide world where you've got marketing and advertising and pharmaceuticals and devices. Like I have friends who if you were an HSMT major, for example, you could end up selling robots, right? Like that is actually a thing, right? Where you are selling robots that do surgery because it's a medical device. Mm-hmm. And so like there's this huge world out there that is available to students who are interested in in any kind of health something. You don't have to just be a nurse or a doctor, which is where most students start. Like that's all they know about, right?
Yeah, well, I call that the McDonald's like menu of understanding college majors. Is that there's like 6 options, and then you can customize them a little bit. But the reality is that it's the entire grocery store. You know, and kind of figuring out which aisles you want to walk down, and that's the purpose of career community. So, you know, as an undergraduate, I came from a really broad field. I was in communications and public relations. Mm-hmm. I talked about that a little bit on the arts, media, and design episode. But as a student who's going into this field, because there is so much variety, what's the best way to be able to narrow down and kind of cut through like, okay, I can do a million things, but oh my goodness, that could be overwhelming. How can I really focus in on where I want to start my career and prepare for that?
Okay, wow. I think part of it is just, so everything can be found on the internet. I have found that if a student ever tells me that they're interested in something, if they actually, like, even if they've never heard of anybody doing whatever it is they're interested in, generally speaking, if you Google it, it actually does exist, right? And so on some level, I encourage students to do their own exploration of something that they might have thought about, or if you have an interest in 3 different things, I'm pretty sure there's a way where those things intersect. So I've had students who are interested in health and art. Well, there is lots of intersection between health and art in today's world. You just have to go out there and find it. There are jobs. I mean, right, things that we don't think about. If you're interested in health and architect, like there are just so many things. So my first thought is explore the internet, look at the jobs that are out there, look at some of the professional organizations. There are, I don't know if you all list professional organizations on your website, but there are definitely professional organizations that do all kinds of things around the health space. And so that might be also a place for them to start. Also in their classes, pay attention, talk to your professors. They know a lot of stuff, right? Most of them have had experiences that are wide and varied. And if you are willing to go have a conversation with them, which I encourage, you absolutely can learn a lot. That's sort of where I am. But if you have a basic interest, move forward into a space that will help you. And think outside the box. Like if you're squeamish, you cannot be a nurse. So think about something else. You want to be involved in the health system, there's more than one way to do that.
Yeah, I always love the story of a dear friend of mine, Clay, that I grew up with, who's a very successful attorney now, but for his entire life was going to be a doctor. That was his life. He took one anatomy class and passed out and changed his entire direction in life. Don't let yourself get to that point, I think is the idea. And I want to go back to something you said there about being in the classroom and being active in it. I think we talk and spend a lot of time talking to students about how to be actively participants in the classroom experience, but it can be a very daunting thing to try to go and approach an instructor or a professor to have a conversation outside of that experience. So what are things you've seen students do that successfully sort of navigate and work themselves through that, who get over that fear and then are able to have good dialogue with a faculty member?
Well, a couple things, right? So participate in class. If you would like to get the attention of your instructor, the easiest thing to do is to participate in class. So when a question is asked, raise your hand. Most instructors are expecting students to take a few minutes to think before they raise their hand and to compose their thoughts. So contributing to class is one way to sort of break those barriers. The instructor will respond, and then it's taken away a little bit of the barrier between the two of you. Go up to your instructor after class or make an appointment and go see them at office hours. I would also participate in things where lots of instructors on our campus are doing things on campus where students can participate. Those are other things that they can do. Ask for advice. We adults love to give advice, right? We love to sort of say, okay, young person, let me give you my knowledge, right? And so I think that you just have to be bold enough to do it the first time, right? I've had students who have been super reluctant to talk to the teacher, right? Talk to the instructor, and have found that once they do, it is not as scary as they thought it was going to be. And right, so most instructors are absolutely going to want to talk to you if you're interested, especially if you're interested in something that if they're teaching the course, it is an area of interest for them, and they will have stuff to share with you.
Yeah, I think a great in for that is find something that you really connected to in that day's lecture and just ask a follow-up about it outside of the realm of the classroom discussion. That you say, hey, I really want to talk to you more about this that we talked about today. Can I come by during office hours?
Absolutely.
Yeah, because I think the idea of if you want people to take interest in you, show some interest in them as the start. Right. It's very much like dating. People laugh when I say that, but it's very true. Relationships are relationships, and they all start with building communication. And I think that's one of the cool things about this field in particular, and particularly what you do in public health policy and things like that, is it is a lot about getting groups together who all have the same goal in mind to provide quality health care, but the way they go about delivering that is functionally different, but getting them on the same page. So what's that like? If you can nutshell that for students that are considering going into one of these paths, what that experience is like, and how do you get doctors and administrators and nurses and pharmacists and security and all these other places in the same place to be able to run the facility?
I think that most people come into those spaces understanding that a team mindset is necessary. So not groups, so like most of our students have done group work. And when they do group work, they're all like, okay, you take this piece, you take this piece, you take this piece. And usually they end up with a disastrous project because you can't really operate in that setting and think that you're going to have a cohesive project. Mm-hmm. So I think most people who are working in the health system understand that a team mindset is necessary, and that it takes more than one person to make sure that the delivery of health services actually happens in a way that is beneficial to the individual or patient that needs it. And so I think that if you don't like people, this is not a space for you to work in, because it is consistently a team sport, right? Like doctors do not work on their own. Administrators do not. Literally, there's no space in the health system where you are a single working by yourself person. Even if you're doing research in this space, you are not working by yourself. Even if you are the IT person, you are not working by yourself. In all of these spaces, you have the skill of learning to work with other people. And so some of the stuff that we cover in specifically HSMT, we talk about emotional intelligence. We talk about what it is to work in a team. We talk about these things because these are skills that students will need as they move forward in their career. And these are also things that have become huge in the health system, right? So no longer are people as concerned about IQ as they are about EQ, which is emotional intelligence, right? And so emotional intelligence is the difference between you fitting into a team and you not. And so we are trying to prepare students for as much real life, what they're going to walk into, as possible, because it's not just I know things, it is I have the people skills as well to exist in these spaces. And I feel like we do these specifically for HSMT, but any student is welcome to come to them. We do these early career panels where we have professionals come in and talk to students. And I don't think I've ever sat in on one of those sessions where the professionals did not talk about the value of being able to relate to other people because of the team environment. And so literally, it is one of the first things. As soon as a student asks a question about what it's like to work, they are all talking about the team environment. And so that is absolutely something like, yeah, so if you need to be alone, this is not a space that will work for you. You have to be able to work with others. And it's something that you can work on and build the skill to do it. It's not like you have to know how to do it
Mm-hmm.
initially. So
No, I think that's great. And what I hope that does is allow students to realize that you're doing the building blocks of that throughout your college experience.
absolutely, right? Like, so when you are taking a class and they're asking you to work in a group, especially if the instructor says, do not just give out the individual, like, don't do that. Work on this together. Collaboration makes your project stronger, right? And you are practicing for, we act like school is not the real world. School is actually the real world, but you are practicing for your professional life versus your academic life. And that's how you should be thinking about it. This is all practice. So you're practicing in a safer space, because at school, we won't fire you. In the professional world, it's a little different. But here you can practice and you can work on the skills that are required to move you forward, so that when you get to the professional world, you already have some of the skills that are needed for you to work well with people and to do your job efficiently and effectively.
I think it's always eye-opening to students when we tell them, particularly when they get into their major-specific classes and things, that you're working next door to your colleagues. Like, right. These are the people you're going to work with the rest of your career if you stay in this field. And even if you don't, this is your beginning of your professional network. Yep. And it kind of demystifies those words for people a little bit. I think, yeah.
They struggle with the idea of network. I find students struggle with the idea of networking because they don't always seem to understand how valuable it is. And so because students are not as experienced, sometimes they are far more focused on making an interaction transactional instead of making a connection to a person. And so ideally, every professional that you come into contact with is an opportunity to build a relationship that could, at some point in the future, be beneficial in terms of mentorship. It could lead to a job. Like, they're just, you have no idea where the people that you meet can help you get to. And it should not always be just for that. Some of it's just going to be, you need someone to bellyache about your job to, and this person gets it. And so you even have that type of camaraderie, and they don't work at your workplace. So it's actually a lot easier to talk to them, right? So, I mean, there's all kinds of reasons to connect to other human beings. We're trying with, because it's not just friend them on LinkedIn. It's an actual conversation needs to happen with people, right? Beyond just, oh, well, on social media, well, that's nice, but that's not actual connection. That's a whole nother podcast.
It definitely could be, and maybe will be in a future episode of Career Bits here. But Deborah, as we kind of wrap up thoughts here and things, I wanted to ask you if you could give anyone considering going into the healthcare science and research career community fields any piece of academic and then professional advice, like things they can do that will set them up for success in the classroom and then beyond the classroom. What would those be?
So a couple of things. Professionalism starts now, right? Like, professionalism does not start when you get your first job. It starts now. So start practicing those things. So the way you write emails, the way that you engage with your classmates and your professors, all of those things. Even if you are going into the physical sciences, I think even though sometimes those spaces are a little bit more solitary, you're still going to require people, right? So, like, you sort of thinking about building networks, whether it is on campus or as you meet people off campus, I always encourage students to, if they can seek out and can have an internship experience, that they would do that. And that they would take their classes seriously, right? You get out of your classes what you put into them, right? Like, it is not your instructor's complete and total responsibility for your learning. You are actually responsible for your learning. And if you actually pushed into the space, you'd be actually surprised at how much you learn beyond just whatever's in front of you. We're not just like making this up to give you busy work to do. And so when I think about like students coming into this space, you have to want it, and you have to be willing to push into the space in order to learn as much as you can before you get out into the real world.
Fantastic.
Again, real world, professional world. Sorry. Even I do it, which I'm not supposed to do. Oh, and the other thing I wanted to say was, we were talking about sort of talking to your instructors before. If you are still too unwilling to, don't feel comfortable talking to them, start with an email. Send them an email that just says, I was super interested in this in class. Can you share more? And at least you're making a connection, even if it's not you talking to them. You can get to that, build up to that.
Excellent advice all the way. Deborah, please, thank you so much for being a part of Career Bits. Tell folks how they can connect with you on campus if they have further questions or just want to talk with you.
They can contact me using email, dbeet@uncc, so dbeete @uncc.edu. I am always super happy to talk to students. They are the best part of my job. So yeah, feel free.
Happy to welcome to Career Bits Trish Goebel, the Senior Director of Patient Care Services for Caremont Health and a 3-time UNC Charlotte alum. Trish, thank you for joining us for the show.
Thank you guys for the opportunity. It's always great to either be back on campus or part of campus. I always enjoy my time coming back and, seeing the growth and the awesome opportunities that you guys are having as students. I was a very fortunate alumni. I graduated in 2009 with my bachelor's, and then again in 2014 with my master's in nursing administration, and then my doctorate in nursing practice in 2016, all from UNC Charlotte. And, has brought me a lot of success. And, anytime I can come back to campus to, support you guys and anything I can do, I'm always excited. It's exciting to see the growth and the opportunities that students have as the campus is growing as well.
Trish, that's great. And that's exactly why we brought you on, is to talk to our students who are either already in majors where they know they're going to be direct care providers, or those who might be considering those kind of fields. So let's start with that. If you're a new student, what kind of advice would you pass along to someone who is considering going into nursing as a career field?
So I definitely think it's important to get experience, and specifically, even if it's not in a nursing role, as a CNA or a secretary, or at least being in a hospital setting or a facility somewhere where you're going to be around patients. It's a different world. It's definitely different. Nothing's more surprising to students sometimes when they go from that classroom setting to, oh my goodness, I have to touch someone. And it can really impact for me, one of the hardest things, I'm not an outgoing person. So having to speak to people in some uncomfortable situations and just gaining those skills of being able to discuss difficult situations or touching people and being in that real live environment, it really gives you an idea, as well as all the different opportunities that you can have as a nurse. I think for me, I didn't realize as many opportunities or job skills or sets that you could have as a nurse. But also, it lets you know whether this is really the field. You have to have a heart for it. It's hard work, but it gives you an idea of maybe what you like, what you don't like. There's so many opportunities as a nurse or a healthcare provider, but it allows you to see that and see where you kind of fit into that.
That's fantastic. Trish, think back to when you were starting out into your student career, maybe about halfway through. So let's talk to students that have already made that decision. They're in the program now. And what are things that you need to know how to do beyond the subject matter that you're learning? Like, what are some of those other skills that you need to develop to be successful in nursing?
Yeah, so I think, for me, when I'm hiring new nurses, the thing that I tell them that I'm looking for is someone who has a passion and loves what they do, because I think that's wholeheartedly number one. We can teach people the skills, but I can't teach you how to be nice and have a drive to learn and to be flexible. We all know every day healthcare is changing. How we have provided healthcare this year has changed tremendously for us. So we have all had to be very adaptable. and just flexible. I think critical thinking, learning on your feet. You never know when a patient's going to change, and no two patients are ever the same. So, we can teach people how to start an IV or how to do an assessment, but really that engagement and learning and asking questions, I would much rather a nurse ask 1,000 questions and be able to teach and assist them than doing the wrong thing and harming a patient. So we really want those students who are engaged and asking those questions during clinical and really getting to know the staff and the workflow. That's your time kind of too for your on-site interview. When you're in those clinical spaces doing your clinical work as a student, get to know the staff, engage with the staff, see what they like best about where they're working, and because they're the ones who are living it every day. And I think that's so important to learn how you're going to fit into that culture.
Trish, to that point, how can folks, I know they can say that when they're networking with folks or they're in interviews and things, but what's the best way to put something like your passion and what you really care about? How can you demonstrate that on something like a resume, which may be the first, scan that people send in front of a potential employer?
I think definitely giving examples of how you, or your why. So, one thing we ask our employees is, what's your why? What brings you joy into providing care for patients? Because it's not always glamorous or easy, but what brings you the joy? I was a geriatric nurse for years, and people would be like, oh my goodness, that's terrible. It's hard. The patients are hard. They have a lot of meds. They're confused. But for me, even it just brought me joy to be with them at that end of their life, or that time when sometimes it's not the most glamorous time, but they still need that care. And what is it that's important to you, and what kind of impact do you want to have on whatever type of, nursing or healthcare that you choose? There's so many, and I never in a million years imagined what I'm doing now would be that. But you really have to love, and I think putting that on your resume, your why, what brings you joy in healthcare, because we can, like I said, teach you the skills, but we need the passion behind it and the caring.
That's excellent advice, Trish. So tell folks a little bit about your work at Caramont and the kinds of roles that you tend to recruit for from UNC Charlotte, what people can expect, and best way to find out about them.
So my role is definitely more of an administrative role now. I've worked in various roles. I started as a new nurse grad actually at the hospital that I'm at. We're a 435-bed community hospital. So I started off, as a student nurse and then a graduate nurse. And, my role is a lot of project management. I do a lot of projects right now. I'm working this week. We're working on a unified communication platform, doing some testing, working with IT folks, working with physicians, making sure, nurses are educated on the product. So it really is a house-wide project where you have to have buy-in from stakeholders, and it's an engagement. It's actually a project we've been working on for about 2 years, and I'm the clinical leader. I'm also working on a project now. I will be we're building a new hospital in Belmont, North Carolina. So really exciting to be venturing out and building a hospital from the ground up. I never thought, just the experience to see something in fruition from a piece of paper and, drawings that I made actually on floor plans. So very exciting. There's so many things that, if having that clinical thinking about what a nurse needs at her fingertips. And then also I do a lot with the students and placement, work a lot with the nursing faculty at UNC Charlotte to make sure we are offering clinical opportunities for the students there. And then lastly, for the interview processing, working with the nurse managers to make sure we have the people who are the right fit here in the organization. Definitely looking for, those nurses who have the drive and the passion and the caring. Drive for education and professional development is huge for me. I think, as nurses, we're continuous learners, and nursing changes every day, and you have to have that mindset where you're continuously professionally developing yourself, whether it's in a formal education setting or a non-formal through, research, or even learning and reading research articles, or engaging in different ways professionally through professional organizations.
Trish, thank you so much for providing this information. Tell folks how they can follow you and keep up with you.
Yeah, so I'm always on LinkedIn, and I try to, normally when I talk to students, they will try to connect with me. My name is Patricia Goebel. It may be under Patricia Goebel or Trish Goebel. But also, I love, anytime anybody wants to send me questions, you can easily find me also through the Alumni Association. So I definitely am more than welcome to always answer questions. I know a lot of people have questions about, what are the opportunities specifically in healthcare leadership, nursing leadership. I'm always happy. I think the most important thing is getting the information back. I love being a nurse more than anything. And I can't begin to think of all the roles and how many nurses we need. But there's so many opportunities in healthcare, and healthcare is constantly evolving, but would love to answer any questions that anyone has. And I'm available always for the students.
Happy to welcome to Career Bits now, Felicia Fletcher, Senior Manager for Community Development with the American Cancer Society here in Charlotte. Felicia, thanks so much for joining me on Career Bits.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
So as we talk to students about opportunities in the healthcare science and research fields, American Cancer Society obviously has a variety of roles. And I think people are familiar with the organization, but they may not be as familiar with the number of areas that one can work if they work for the American Cancer Society. So tell folks a little bit about all the different things that they could do if they wanted to intern or work with ACS.
Mm-hmm. Well, the great thing about it is I hope we have about at least 15 minutes. I'm just playing. But our career opportunities are definitely diverse as our people, and we include every discipline found in business enterprises. So a lot of people, of course, will think American Cancer Society, I need to be a researcher. Research is awesome, and that is definitely what we build our mission upon. But there are other areas that they could get involved in regards to being involved as ACS employee, such as my role within the community development realm, where you are interfacing directly with the community and you are taking the mission and the movement into the community and getting individuals involved. So basically build up on that relationship building aspect of American Cancer Society, because without the people, we wouldn't have the mission and we wouldn't be able to push forward with the movement. And then we also have business operations, which of course would assist with the day-to-day and making sure that our programs and our mission and our movement are put out to the community development managers so that we can execute within our communities. And then we also have human resources, information technology, and our Hope Lodge, which a lot of people probably would not know that the Hope Lodge is a program of the American Cancer Society, where we have individuals who are ACS employees that come and work in our Hope Lodge, which is our home away from home for our cancer survivors and their families when they are receiving treatment. So that's just a couple of high-level opportunities. Of course, we do have legal opportunities as well, because you always need general counsel when you are taking on a responsibility within the community, as well as finance and a strong push and need for the fundraising aspect. So we do have professional fundraisers.
So Felicia, let's talk a little bit about how folks find their way into the American Cancer Society and working for you all. Particularly, I mentioned you all, like a lot of organizations, recruit heavily from your intern pool and things like that. And what is it that makes interns or potential interns stand out to you as candidates when you're recruiting them?
That is an awesome question. And typically when I am responsible for building the committee or the panel for interviews, we usually inquire, how often have you either dedicated time to volunteer outside of your work or outside of your studies? Because that is a big component for us. We would like to have someone that wants to be there, that has that passion and drive. So typically if we have someone that has expressed interest in being involved with the American Cancer Society as an employee, I usually ask them, would they be willing to be a volunteer? Because being a volunteer, although different from volunteer to employee, being a volunteer will allow you to see the inner workings of what we would like an employee to be able to bring to the other side of the table. So that's the first key or nugget that I provide to someone that may call me or message me on LinkedIn about how do I get my foot in the door to even get an interview. Becoming a volunteer is key. Being able to help lead an event, either it be Making Strides, Real Men Wear Pink, or a totally different third-party fundraising campaign in which we can see that you are willing to put forth the energy, time, and resources as a volunteer. And thus, sometimes it will turn into you being an amazing employee as well.
And that's every kind of role too, right? Not just the community-facing roles, but even the researcher roles, the more science roles.
Correct. That is correct. Being involved as a volunteer or someone that is shadowing, it shows that passion, or at least that you put forth the effort to show that you have real interest in what you would like to do as a career.
So as students are considering what they want to do, let's kind of step back to maybe someone who's a freshman or a new student at UNC Charlotte, and they're kind of looking at what they want to do, and they know they want to make a difference in the world. They want to be involved in their community. Why are healthcare organizations like yours such a great fit for someone like that?
Because we truly are making that impact. And depending on where you want to make the impact will help you push into what career opportunity you want. So for us, of course, it is the impact of the cancer community. So a lot of individuals will look at American Cancer Society, and we have so many different roles that you could possibly take on. So this gives you an opportunity to hopefully get involved with ACS and try the different career paths before you actually land upon, okay, I do want to be part of the Hope Lodge, or I want to be a researcher, or I want to take on the community fundraising aspect of it. So understanding that even with your community fundraising, you are still fully engaged in the mission of ACS, and you are that pillar, that ambassador within the American Cancer Society, that inside and internally and externally.
You've mentioned before that you really look for people that are involved in their communities, that they've done some volunteer work, clearly have a passion for what they want to do. What are other ways you've seen candidates display that passion for what they want to do on something like their resume? Because you can talk about that in an interview, but getting somebody's attention off that piece of paper or off their LinkedIn profile, that really is key to getting to the next step. So what are some of the more creative ways you've seen people display that to get your attention?
The most creative way that I've seen that's gotten my attention is your portfolio, or your, I would say, your electronic footprint. Like when you post on social media about the different volunteer activations that you participated in, that for me is a gold star. I look for that resume, although that key to getting into the interview. There, I would say that you would have to add that social media component, because we're all on social media, and truth be told, all employers now check social media. So if you are able to tie in your virtual footprint to your resume, so I can match it up and I can really see, hey, you did volunteer at a couple of American Cancer Society events, or you are part of the student government council where you're out and about and you're engaging other students, that will really help me see, and that truly highlights and gives me that visual that you are actually speaking and doing as you have on your resume.
And Felicia, as you mentioned, you have diverse roles at ACS, as you have a diverse population that works there and that you work with, because that's one thing that we all know is cancer touches everyone, no matter who you are.
Cancer does not discriminate.
Exactly. Because our students now are more aware and more conscious of the diversity efforts of organizations and things, talk a little bit about what that's like at American Cancer Society, what someone could experience.
Well, I mean, the great thing about it is our experiences come, of course, from different viewpoints, and then that gives us the opportunity to look at I would say a hurdle. I wouldn't say a problem, a hurdle in which we need to accomplish within, say, for instance, within the LGBTQ community LGBTQ plus community, where we're trying to get that awareness, be able to enter into the community and provide the awareness and the information so that they can understand that American Cancer Society is much more than just research, but preventative measures and having that education leading first. But of course, it has to be a delicate conversation, because we don't want someone to think that we are trying to force our way into a particular community in which we have no representation. So that is very important for us to make sure that we have representation, diverse representation across the board, so that when we enter into communities, individuals are able to see and to have that equal level of understanding, that you understand me just as I understand you, not just because you look like me, but you are in my community and you are of a diverse platform versus just sending the cookie cutter in with information. You are really in my community and you understand, and we're able to hopefully get in the community and provide that impact.
Felicia, what kind of things should students interested in working for American Cancer Society or just working in the healthcare community in general be reading, be paying attention to, getting information from as they're building their memory capital while they're in school?
Oh, that's a good question. Memory capital, I have to use that one. But I definitely take the time to read through Forbes. I'm always getting articles, and I like when people make sure that they post on LinkedIn or they're following individuals on LinkedIn, such as like the nonprofit like GuideStar or Charity Advisor, what they're saying about different nonprofits and how they're interacting within the communities, but then also business magazines and understanding that the market does truly impact the overall success of a nonprofit, because we are nonprofits and we are continuously fundraising and trying to make sure that we are able to push into 2021 and 2022. So just making sure that you have a diverse repertoire of what you're reading and engaging, and those individuals that you're following, such as business leaders that you can tap into to either get expertise from or possibly ask questions. And of course, webinars. Webinars are key. I think on LinkedIn, I'm participating in 2 or 3 webinars during the week just to hear how the nonprofit world is being impacted, as well as the business forward communities are being impacted, and just try to stay ahead of the curve and understanding the analysis of being able to pull from the nonprofit world, the for-profit world, and how the business world is operating. So, of course, keep it very diverse.
Felicia, fantastic advice all around. Tell folks how they can connect with you on LinkedIn and follow the work of the American Cancer Society.
Oh, yes, please. You can connect with me on LinkedIn of my name, Felicia Fletcher, and that is Felisha. So that's F as in Frank, E as in elephant, L as in Lisa, I as in ice, S as in Sam, H as in hat, A as in apple, last name Fletcher. And of course, the American Cancer Society is also listed on LinkedIn, and we hope that you do follow and definitely engage in the articles and information that we are providing. And then you can also go to www.cancer.org for all things American Cancer Society.
Happy to welcome into Career Bits now Rachel King, Assistant Director and Career Coach, and Brianna Turner, Career Coach with our Healthcare Science and Research communities in the University Career Center. Brianna, Rachel, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you, Jay. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So we've had some great information already from Deborah we've already had some great information on campus from our campus partner and from one of our a couple of our industry representatives. But I really wanted to talk to you as our career coaches on. Let's start at the beginning for a student who's coming into school or is thinking about, okay, I think I want to go into healthcare science and research. What are things that they should consider and be willing to, hey, this is what I'm going to be a part of if I'm going to go into this community?
So I definitely think that it's important to understand your why, because if you have a strong understanding of why you want to do something, and hopefully it's not just for monetary gain, because a lot of people think that doctors or nurses or PAs make a lot of money, and that's not always the case. But if you have a reason for your why and it's more than just money, then that's going to keep you motivated through your harder science classes, through all the papers you might have to write as a public health major, and just consistently push you in order to be in the field for more than just money, and understanding that you're there to help people, to make a difference in policy, to change the scope of healthcare within this country and possibly the world.
Yeah, and I'll follow up to Brianna. On the more practical side, I think it's going to be a matter of, understanding what you want to do. So taking that why and then applying it to the various career paths that are available to you. So, for example, if you're interested in going into the medical field, there's going to be a lot of steps that you need to take now in order to set yourself up for that post-graduation. So you're going to want to start thinking about what your clinical hours are going to look like. How many patient care hours do you need to have? What practical experiences can you gain to get exposure to working with patients while you're an undergraduate student? Because by the time you need to apply to med school, these are all the things that those schools are going to be looking for. They want to know that you've completed a significant number of patient care hours. They want to know that you are interested in being a doctor, but why do you want to be a doctor? How do you want to serve your patients? How do you want to assist them? They're going to want to know, have you done any volunteer work? Have you done any job shadowing? That sort of thing. And for a lot of med schools, those are going to be hard requirements. So really, even as a freshman coming out the gate, it's going to be good to understand exactly what it is you need to do for a med school or pre-health professions route so that you can take the appropriate steps to get there. On the other side, if you're going into healthcare administration or any other type of science or research field, you're going to really want to think about, again, your why, as Brianna said, but you're also going to want to know, like, what skills do I need to have and need to develop to be successful in those industries, and what are ways I can achieve those. So one of the number one ways is going to be internships, seeking opportunities for those. And that is definitely something that we can assist you with in the Career Center, as well as just getting some of that practical experience through student organizations and some volunteer work and things like that.
You both have mentioned some great number of things there. And so one thing I wanted to ask you about is, besides the direct application skills that you'll need to follow into one of these fields or in one of the majors that you mentioned, what are some other things, some more transferable skills that folks who are going to be successful in the field need to develop while they're in school? And then what are some good ways to do so?
So when I get students, a lot of them are like, well, I've never done X, Y, and Z. I've never done da, 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 da. And they'll be like, I'm just a waiter. And I say, well, you want to go to med school? You want to be a doctor? And they say, well, yeah. And I'm like, well, when it's a lunch rush or you have a really, really hard table, you have to understand the proper communication skills. You have to understand your time management. You have to understand your organizational skills. And those are all things that medical schools and doctors need. Those are all things that nurses have to do. They have to be able to have good bedside manners when communicating to a patient. They have to be able to have time management in order to balance class and possibly work and just different things like that. So I would say that take a look introspectively and look at what jobs you're already doing that might not be a CNA, but you have the different communication skills, you have organizational skills, you have time management skills, which are all going to be applicable in your profession and then also as a student before you get to your profession.
Yeah, I would agree with Brianna. I always, when I work with students, I do the same thing. I challenge them to reflect upon the experiences they already have, and I have them break it down to me, like, what were your responsibilities and what were your tasks? And, if they were a waitress or a cashier or something to that effect, I'll say, well, what are some of the skills that you think you got out of that experience that employers are going to appreciate? And then once we start having that conversation, it's like light bulbs go off. Like, oh yeah, I do have good customer service skills, or I do have the ability to multitask and things like that. So it's going to be necessary to understand what you already possess and then seek opportunities while you're in school to capitalize on them and to grow them. Employers really appreciate soft skills. Regardless of the industry you're going into, you need to have strong soft skills. So you need to be able to work with people. You need to have the ability to multitask. You need to have strong time management, things like that. So whether you're going clinical or whether you're going administrative, those are all skills that you're going to need to think about developing and growing.
What are ways the Career Center can help with all of that?
Oh, sorry.
I know we're We're going back and forth.
So in terms of the services at the Career Center, one thing that I really enjoy doing are mock interviews with students, especially the students that are applying to medical school, PT school, OT schools, all the different schools for a graduate level degree. And it's really important to have mock interview practice when you're thinking about applying to these different programs, because they want to get to know you as a person and not just what's on your resume and not just what's on your CV. They want to be able to understand that you can speak to those experiences. And it's an interview for you as a program admitted to, because they need to figure out if you're going to mesh well with the cohort, if you're going to mesh well with the professors. And then you also have the opportunity to maybe speak with professors and be like, oh, wait, maybe I don't actually like this program as much as I thought I did. So it's just as much of an interview for you as it is for them. And it's really important to practice those skills in advance so you'll feel more comfortable going in and you'll have the confidence to do well.
I would also add, you have career coaches like Brianna and myself, and then our colleague Stephanie Bird available to you to meet with you, in person this fall, on a limited basis, of course, but definitely virtually or by telephone. We want to talk to you about your career goals. We want to understand where you want to go, and we want to help you map out a plan to get there. So I think regardless, if you already have an idea of what you want to do and kind of know what you're doing, it's not a bad idea to just talk with us and let us have that conversation with you to make sure that you're crossing all your T's and dotting all your I's, so to speak. We are available to you. We want to help you. That is our job. And we want to make sure you get where you want to be.
Rachel, Brianna, thank you so much for being on Career Bits. Tell folks how they can connect with both of you.
So this is Rachel. I'm available on LinkedIn. You can search me by Rachel King. You can also contact me via email at rachel.king@uncc.edu. Any questions you may have, feel free to drop me a line, and I'm more than happy to connect with you.
And this is Brianna. You can email me at bturne56@uncc.edu. And I'm also on LinkedIn, Brianna, BREANA, Turner, TURNER.
Thank you for joining us on this latest episode of Career Bits, spotlighting the healthcare, science, and research career community. You can find more information on our website, career.uncc.edu.